Hello friends, this is Christian Wiese. Today's presentation is called Getting Yourself Out of the Way. Let me start with a little story, the story of a perfect archer, someone who always hits the target, always goes around and shows everybody proudly, look, I hit it again, look, I hit it again. And at one point somebody asked him, well, how exactly do you do it? And the perfect archer reveals that he shoots first and afterwards draws the target around it. The first time when I heard that story, I wasn't so impressed. I felt, isn't that a little bit cheating? But quite frankly, I think it sums up quite well what that state of being in the here and now is all about. It's a feeling of being, and pretty much no matter what happens, one feels one always hit the mark. I'm sure you have experienced those states as well. But then to continue the story, let's say there's then a woman who says, well, very good, my friend, but here's a target. Why don't you shoot your arrow and see what you can do? And suddenly the poor man has to actually show what he really can do. For me, that is the path of awakening. We alternate between those two states, sometimes completely present and sometimes being fooled once again by the self. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just have to then be mindful, alert, have to see how we can hit the mark from 30 feet out without our little trick. I think it's also fun. And I think there's nothing wrong with that interim state where we toggle between those two outcomes. To me, the big problem is always that there is always the guru who says, do this and that, and you can always be here now. And those instructions are always very helpful, but they never completely satisfy us. And there's always a feeling, oh, he's there and I'm here, and maybe in 7 years I will be there, but maybe not. And I think that is the completely wrong mindset. As a matter of fact, this comes from the mind. This is the belief that some people are on a pedestal and some others have to work to get there. An alternative viewpoint is that the invite for the light is here and now, and everybody has access to it. It's just that for some, after they hit the mark, they have to go back to the drawing board and have to tackle yet another aspect where the self still hides. And I think that's a much more useful approach, and it certainly describes what I've experienced. In the ego versus self, ego, you may have heard the acronym edging God out. There is once again that perception that if we could just focus on certain positive aspects of ourselves, then we would always be in the here and now. And I think it's a good starting point, but in the end of the day, it doesn't work, because to really be in that blessed state where we first shoot the arrow and afterwards draw the target around it, there is absolutely no self. It's a cessation of self. It's a yet a different state. And I think think about the positive aspects of self. Let's say to be humble, let's say to be loving. The ego can even hide in there. And the cessation of self just has no attributes whatsoever. Everything just is. I think it's important, if you really want to get anywhere, to zoom in on that. So the cessation of self. For the presentation, how to approach it, I came up with a little acronym, MOI, for those who speak French, me in French. 3 dimensions: heart chakra, the spiritual eye, and the crown chakra. As far as the heart chakra or feelings are concerned, M for misidentification. As far as the spiritual eye is concerned, out of focus. And as far as the crown chakra is concerned, illusionary beliefs. I think those are three dimensions that whenever you feel something is off, the arrow went slightly off the mark. Those are the three dimensions you can zoom in. For anybody who's on an awakening course, we experience it here now, but then suddenly we are going back in a loop to something that we identify with, whatever it might be: romantic love, our profession, our family, and there's always another try to try again. How can we be misidentified? Well, on a corporate level, for example, there's a CEO who always wants to do what the investors want him to do. He thinks that he has to satisfy the shareholder. And in 1 year, the shareholders tell him that his stock price goes up if he moves everything into China. And then 4 years later, the same shareholders tell him, no, China is no longer secure, they steal our secret, you have to actually produce everything in the US. And then the poor CEO tries to hire the people that he fired 4 years ago, and then he says, no, I just misidentified. It's not, I'm the steward of a giant ship, it's not about getting quarterly profits, it's about making sure that the people who work for me are being taken care of, the suppliers work in a partnership with me, the customers are happy. The shareholders also are important, but I identify now with a much bigger picture than that. So that would be one little example of how we have been misidentified before, and then zoom into something that is better. Same with the focus. I think you can really see with your eyes sometimes that something is not right. And there's always that opportunity to take a step back and say, let me look at this situation again. The Course in Miracles says, what is temptation but an opportunity to try again? That kind of goes into the direction. Sometimes it's true that when we look, there's broken china on the floor. But often when we really look, and when we look again, we actually see puzzle pieces, and all we have to do is to put them together, and very shortly what we identified as a problem actually disappeared. So we were just out of focus. And that can literally happen in an instant. It's not something that takes years. We just identified with something, and we step out of it, and we see the perfect solution. And lastly, the illusionary beliefs. I think that's a really important one. The example I would give, the assertive people, they kind of tend to step on people's toes, and it's because they feel entitled. They are arrogant. They think they are a cut above others. And when they reflect, often because they themselves had a setback, and start seeing that there is an illusionary belief in there, then suddenly everything suddenly does get better and smoother. Same with people who are passive aggressive. When they truly look, they can see that there is an implicit belief, I don't measure up. And the beauty with those illusionary beliefs, once you see it, from one day to the next, the world that you experience is completely different. So everybody says monitor your mind, still your mind, which I think is hard to do. I think zooming into the heart chakra, reflecting on the vision, on the spiritual eye, and lastly being at one with the crown chakra, the understanding, just gives you three different dimensions. And when you are in harmony with life as is, then suddenly thoughts automatically come to a standstill. Thoughts and feelings only get activated when we think or feel something is off. The moment we are back to that environment where we shoot first and draw a target around it afterwards, thoughts disappear, feelings are serene. I think it's a state that we always have access to. So try it. Get yourself out of the way. That's my message for today. All the best until next time. Bye.